Howdy! This is Professor UD Guru, uniquely unqualified to answer all your questions about everything. What makes spirituality compatible with common sense politics? Oh, I don't know. Let's define spirituality and common sense and politics. Well, let's do that really quick, okay? Common sense politics, for example, Donald Trump's Republican Party, not the other one, not those neocon retards. Spirituality is just anything that's of a non-physical nature. Mind, spirit, religion, philosophy, thinking, spirituality. That's just I don't even like the word, but that's what I'm talking about. Spiritual and physical, okay? That dichotomy. Not everything is physical. You don't get your car designed by a New Age philosopher unless he's also a mechanical engineer. So physical laws apply to physical stuff, while common sense applies to the physical sector of the human being, thus to education and other social systems, such as politics. I'm not saying it's more spiritual to be a Republican versus a Demopublican, but that's mainly because I don't like the word spiritual, since it implies personal progress. So I don't use more spiritual. I don't never use that. I never even think that way. More spiritual. Evaluation and spiritual are in different realms. They don't apply to each other. You don't evaluate someone's spirituality. If you do, that's bogus at the very least. The word spiritual implies progress towards some spiritual goal, some elevated goal. Some elevated spiritual goal implies that so-called spiritual practices make some people more spiritual than others, more advanced. This is called spiritual materialism. It's a dullard's way of looking at the world, very two-dimensional, and the opposite of useful. If there is a video channel devoted to common sense spirituality, I should say philosophy, then this channel, Reality for Beginners, aka the Professor UD Guru Show, is it. Did you know that before science was called science, it was called philosophy? True story. I wouldn't lie to you, Jack. There's another true story. You ain't going to get common sense philosophy or spirituality or whatever you want to call it from science. Science is about the physical stuff. That stuff that can be proven by replicating it, by observing it over and over. Spirit stuff isn't like that. Try replicating an ESP experiment. It's possible, but it's not that likely. For example, when lucid dreamers say out-of-body enthusiasts are fooling themselves, they're wrong. Dreams aren't physical, and the only reason some science addicts want to constrain dreams to the perfectly good principles of physical science is probably that they're afraid of the unknown. They want to pin everything down to some rigid definition. My suggestion is go around the argument over whether lucid dreaming and out-of-body experience are the same thing by using the term unworlding for both phenomena and everything in between. Once upon a time, I had an unworlding Facebook group. It still exists, but I'm not in it. I'm not in Facebook at all. So I don't know what's going on there. Probably a bunch of people spamming each other. That's what was going on there when I quit. There was 2 people I can recall clearly that I blocked from the group when I had it, not for spamming. And I don't think I should have blocked them. I think I was wrong to block them. I think I should have let them say their stupid stuff that I disagreed with. I would think it was wrong for me to block them. I think it would have increased user involvement and engagement in the group if I had actually argued with them. That's what I should have done. But what I really should have done is not had a Facebook group in terms of, my unworlding practice. It did nothing for me to have a Facebook group. It probably had a bad influence on my practice, if you're talking results. Of course, it's arguable that results in unworlding is not even the right goal, or I should say the right approach, because I don't even know if there should be a goal in unworlding. Goals are for the physical world. Should we have goals? My goal is to have a lucid dream every day, 3 lucid dreams every night. Let's talk about these 2 guys that I blocked. Let's call the first one a veteran meditator. He introduced himself by saying that he'd been meditating for 40 years. The dogs are singing. Let's just listen. I used to have a dachshund when I was a kid. If you played chopsticks on the piano, that dog would sing. And the longer you played, the louder you played, the louder and longer the dog would sing. And when you stopped, the dog would stop. No other song, chopsticks only. We used to entertain our friends by saying, watch the dog. Watch what the dog can do. Well, they're finished. We can quickly dispense with veteran meditator by employing the term spiritual materialist, which I learned from a Tibetan Lama who wrote a book on this very topic. He was kind of a pragmatical, worldly Tibetan Lama. He was an alcoholic and a womanizer. I recall he said something to the effect that our addictions ground us, which is an interesting statement. What's an addiction? It's something you repeat over and over. What's the ground? That's the physical world. Keep that in mind. We'll get back to these things and related things. But yeah, spiritual materialist, the veteran meditator, I didn't block him because I didn't like him. I didn't block him until it became apparent that he was not just more spiritual than me, but also a meddlesome busybody control freak and a borderline stalker. So let's move on. You just go around these people. Social media is clogged with them like the devil's aorta at rush hour. This movie is more concerned with the question raised by the median strip moderator. That's the blocked fella number 2. And he introduced himself by saying, I've been lucid dreaming my whole life, but I'm going to learn out-of-body travel, and I'm going to do it in 30 days. And I know I can because I taught myself blah, blah, blah guitar and blah, blah, blah time. So basically, you're a basic unpleasant person. I blocked him when, and I already said I shouldn't have blocked him. My mistake. I should have argued with him. Maybe he was right. But here's what he said. He said, if the world is an illusion, which is something that I always say because I'm kind of a pseudo-Buddhist, if the world is an illusion, then why don't you go out and play on the freeway? You know, dodging cars on the freeway. Well, for one thing, I'm kind of busy, but that's not really the point. The point is this. What makes anyone think that physical illusions can't exist? Real and physical are not the same thing. Everything is real, literally, because infinity is reality. Infinity includes everything, like all the laws, which includes the laws that contradict each other. Reality is infinity, not physicality. So what is physicality? Physicality is threeness. At this point, I'm going to go into hopefully a fairly short description of my theory of everything, which I call symphonemia. I've always called it that, and the word doesn't actually mean anything. But it came from the more or less the notion that there's some sort of spiritual, I don't like that word either, sound that creates the reality. In other words, vibration. So we all know oneness. We've heard about it 1,000 times, including from me. So I won't go into it. Infinity, reality, experience, God, the Tao, the Great Spirit, etc., etc., etc. Infinity. There's no lines drawn on it. It has no boundaries. It isn't a thing. It doesn't have size. Infinity. It's not about size. It's not about, well, it's just so very, very big. You know, it's not about that at all. It's about everything with no definition of anything, no limitation on anything. So you can't really talk about it. That's why there's so many 350-page books written about it. But what people don't talk about that much is two-ness, three-ness, four-ness, five-ness, and on. And the physical world is two-ness, three-ness, and four-ness. I sometimes call it the 2, 3, 4, for lack of a better word, but yeah, I have a physical world. I am a portal into the physical world. I am an example of infinity looking at itself, with me being the portal. By me, I mean the first-person perspective through which awareness is peering. Awareness is oneness. But oneness has these illusory harmonics, I call them, or you can call them chakras which each contribute toward creating the world. Two-ness, three-ness, four-ness, each has its own way of mirroring or reflecting infinity. So these are the ways that infinity can experience itself. But experience is infinity itself. Awareness is infinity itself. Two-ness is when you divide oneness up into parts. Those are the parts. Two-ness is the parts. And that is vibration. That's what vibration is. It's you know, where's my hand? Up. This vibration is like that. Anything goes like that, which basically is everything in the world. Everything can be described as a vibration. Oneness is energy, but all forms of energy can be described as a vibration. Okay, so basically, and you see this in every spiritual book, separation. What's separation? That's two-ness. They don't go so far as to say that two-ness, or the separation, or whatever they call it, duality, is an actual basis of the world, an actual element of the world. What's an element? It's something that can't be broken down any further. So oneness, two-ness, three-ness, these are abstractions. These are reflections of infinity. So two-ness is the parts. Three-ness is when the parts come together. So that would be like attraction, gravity, things that matter, matter itself. Things that matter, things you care about, things you like, things that repeat. Something repeats enough and, oh, hey, that's real. But I'd like to stop saying real and start saying solid, because real and solid are not the same thing. Okay, fourness. What's that? Fourness is when the categories that consist of parts that have come together, when they get put into a certain order. Order, analysis, time. Time is ordered experience. Evaluation. These are things on a scale. You evaluate anything, you measure anything on a scale. That's fourness. Fiveness is when something changes. That's flow, change. And at this point, we transition out of the world into the unworld at large. And of course, the world, my world, your world, any world, the world is just an offshoot of the greater reality, which I call the unworld at large. That's, you know, basically infinity, but you can go out there and have experiences too, because you can make yourself a world out there instead. You can have experiences in the unworld at large. We call this dreams, lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, ecstatic experiences, astral projection. I don't care what you call it. I call it unworlding, when you have experiences in the unworld at large. And they can be physical too. I'm not saying that everything is divided between physical and non-physical. I'm saying that physicality is threeness. That's when something appears to exist, something appears to be real, even though existence itself and reality itself are oneness. Those are infinity. Physicality, solidity is threeness, and that we take that anywhere. Of course, in dreams, in unworldings, something might be solid for a minute. Someone might punch you and it might hurt, but then the solidity just evaporates. So oneness is energy, and these harmonics, two-ness, three-ness, four-ness, five-ness, etc., the overtones of awareness, these harmonics get a certain amount of energy. So it's like equalizer. I forget the right word, but they have them in sound studios. You got all these knobs, and you can adjust them in different ways so different frequencies get more energy. So you make it sound the way you want it to sound. I imagine that synthesizers probably work that way too. And this is your configuration. I've mentioned your configuration several times before. Your configuration is your true vamicle. The settings on those knobs, that's you. I'm talking at a very basic level, and then the light of awareness shines through you, and the configuration is just a group of settings. And you can change by intent. You change the way you express your configuration with each passing moment, each passing day. And then we could talk about sixness, sevenness, eightness, nineness, but I'd prefer not to, because I don't think I understand them very well, because that stuff goes into the uppers, I call them, the upper chakras, the worlds you create outside of so-called physical life. What is physical life? Well, I said threeness is repetition. Okay, we repeat the same circumstances over and over, but new versions of these circumstances each day. That's what a day is. You just repeat yesterday, but you do it different this time. Every day you repeat yesterday, you do it different this time. Do it different tomorrow, do it different tomorrow. Some days are more different than others, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. We call that stress. Stress and tension. You know, there's a difference between what is and should be, between what is and could be. You measure that difference as stress. Sometimes stress makes you laugh out loud. Sometimes stress makes you cry. Sometimes stress makes you die. Apparently, though I don't recall that ever happening to me, but I assume it's going to someday. It seems to be happening to other people, or dogs, or, drowned rats, stuff like that, things that die. Nobody's proven to me that I'm going to die, but I might. I'm not putting it past me. Hopefully that gives you some idea what I'm talking about when I say threeness. Threeness is solidity. So you can have an experience out in the unworld at large where there's a little solidity and a little evaluation. That's a little threeness and a little fourness. And a little identity. That's, like you know who you are. And then a more so-called officially lucid dream. Maybe there's a lot more two-ness. You really know who you are. More fourness. You really evaluate your experience more. You have more critical thinking. So you adjust these things when you learn how to adjust these things. And I say that intent, or let's call that fiveness, the ability to change something. Change. That's fiveness. You learn how to change your configuration. You learn how to change how you express your configuration. So you give more energy to this or that. Normally, you go to sleep and your two-ness, threeness, and fourness just shuts down because you're tired. You've been putting all your energy into the physical world. That's the 2, 3, 4 world. The 2, 3, 4 mind-body world, which are all just expressions of the same thing, your configuration, your true vamicle. So let's go back to Control Home. Is spirituality compatible with common sense politics? Oh, here's another person that I blocked. I just remembered this. Back in my Facebook days, there was this guy who was well known in the so-called unworlding community. He was always talking about unworlding, out-of-body experience. I don't remember the exact situation or the name of this guy or anything, but I think he had a YouTube channel or something, and he was posting libertarian philosophy. And I say, geez, why mix politics with spirituality? And not that I like the word spirituality, because I don't use it ever. In fact, I didn't just say it. Why mix the two? So the title on this movie is spirituality compatible with common sense politics, or with any politics? Well, I'm saying that it's compatible with common sense politics, but I'm going to have to explain why after lunch, because I'm too hungry to think clearly right now. So I'm going to take off my Professor UD Guru hat and my Professor UD Guru shirt and go eat lunch. And when I come back, I'll try to explain the answer to the question, is spirituality compatible with common sense politics, such as the common sense Republican Party being created by Donald Trump. So the big question for today, once again, is what makes spirituality compatible with common sense politics? By spirituality, I'm not referring to anyone in particular's philosophy or religion, including the Christian religion, which the conservatives tend to cling to in the U.S. to a certain degree, but not all of them. A better way to state the question would be like the median strip moderator mentioned above. If the world is an illusion, why is it a bad idea to dodge cars on the freeway or jump off of a cliff? First off, I agree wholeheartedly that playing on the freeway or jumping off of cliffs is a terrible idea, especially if you plan to live a long time. These questions always boil down to another question: what is death? Which of course we can't even pretend to answer, so part of the answer always has to be, I don't know. And anyone who knows what death is would have to be a lot smarter than me. But like any good pseudo-Buddhist, I've arrived at the conclusion, many times over, that this seemingly physical world is, in fact, an illusion, an artifact generated and regenerated by awareness with each passing moment and each passing day. But the reason death keeps popping up in the middle of this discussion is that we have to admit we don't know what existence is. So how can we say, does it end at death? Well, we don't know what death is. We don't know what existence is. How are we going to answer any questions about anything? It almost seems like we invented the physical world so that we could answer some questions. We like facts. Some of us. Existence can only be defined by circular arguments like existence is reality, or reality is existence, or reality is infinity, infinity is existence, etc. What it boils down to is that the physical world depends on existence in order to even exist, while existence itself can't depend on anything to exist. Existence obviously has to pre-exist everything else, which makes it the same thing as infinity, especially if you believe, like I do, that existence, infinity, and awareness are the same thing. Not that oneness is a thing, but we pretend it is, just long enough to get ourselves good and confused. I think that my theory of everything, symphonemia, by pointing out that there are basic elemental thoughts which generate our perception and or our ability to perceive the world, we lay out a mechanism of sorts in which there is a first thought, a second thought which builds off the first thought, a third thought which couldn't exist without the first two, and on until a set of tools comes into play, with which awareness or infinity is able to construct a world where its limited representatives, entities like you and I can play and even return to day after day in the pursuit of life and hopefully even long life. Then in the midst of it all, we find there are others playing in our sandbox. Presumably, they've come into being through a process similar to our own life-inducing process by becoming aware of their own existence. Unfortunately, some of these other entities would like to separate us from our goal of long life. And when we manage to stay alive anyway, it seems like we eventually come up with other goals, besides just staying alive. Besides life, we come up with even more abstract goals, such as liberty and the pursuit of happiness. At this point, we automatically split into two factions. Remember two-ness as the basis for individual existence, duality. The common sense faction, the conservabutts, which perceives that we have limited energy, which humans often characterize as limited money, time, and other scales of measuring our resources, and therefore arrange our shoulds in terms of conserving energy and money and prioritizing our desires and related pursuits based on what appear to be facts, the solid, provable things in life. So-called facts are just those things which seem to be repeatable and commonly available for all to see. But there's always that other faction, the dreamer faction, the libtriffids, which is largely made up of individualists who are pretty sure that their castles in the air are more important than the common sense beliefs, more advanced than the common sense beliefs of what used to be a clear majority. In my world, I don't know about yours, but when I was a child, a war began between the conservabutts and the libtriffids. And I can't help saying that it started in 1963 on that fateful day when we suddenly found ourselves with a common sense president who wanted to fix things and his common sense brother who wanted to stop organized crime. So here we come pretty soon with the libtriffids consuming large quantities of chemical agents which put them in touch with the transient, illusory nature of reality by altering their state of consciousness without the previously requisite effort required to meditate the mind into a better place. And the libtriffids therefore gave up common sense as a way of life and began to believe that the illusory nature of the world and the wish for change to be a sort of effortless flipping of some switch, some cosmic switch, should be the basis for making and enforcing laws and other guidelines of social behavior. Meanwhile, the conservabutts continue to believe that the physical world is the only place there is, barely noticing that their religious beliefs were becoming irrelevant to most people in spite of, heaven and stuff, which the part that nobody really actually believed in anymore. Especially the educated and indoctrinated generations that built upon the revelations of the 1960s and subsequent drug-fueled generations when moralism gave way to cultural relativism and everybody readjusted their expectations of each other to include the actual non-physical aspects of the world, but then went too far in placing importance on these amorphous philosophical stirrings of inner questioning. In politics, things got so confusing that all the swamp creatures had to do was to put a mulatto in the White House, one who could talk, since Bush II could hardly do so and had already been caught making war for profit with imaginary weapons of mass destruction as the pretense for doing so. With a black fella in charge of the official megaphone, which I call the Hubble tongue, the tactics formerly employed by controlling the Republicrats were able to be switched over to their more natural home, the Liberal Demopublican Party. Liberal means generous, and this is the overeducated, thus indoctrinated party that really eats up philosophy and utopian ideas about equality, and it is a generous, aka liberal mindset that is most prone to accepting fantasy solutions to solid physical problems. In short, it's perfectly okay, just fine, and 100% understandable to believe the world is a physical illusion of a transient nature, while also recognizing that by its very physicality it is in need of common sense solutions to the many problems that pop up here on this planet of ours, which seems to be a consensus, cooperative confabulation of our infinitely varying and interweaving personal confabulations, wherein the common is actually what creates the physical. By having our personal illusions find places of commonality wherein they can intersect with each other. Like I said, threeness, or the third dimension, where stuff matters, where stuff is matter, is created by repetition, from person to person and from experience to experience. This is how we get wise old sayings like, live and learn. And in spite of the fact that I spent most of my life trying to prove that I could do any dang thing I wanted and get away with it, the fact is that liberal minds got us where we are today, while common sense is how we extricate ourselves from the web of lies that comes from unrepeatable, unobservable, unevidenced beliefs of libtreffids who live in fantasy worlds and want us conservabutts to shut up and join them there. In closing, I would like to read from the Common Sense Akashic Record just a few familiar wise sayings. Live and learn. A penny saved is a penny earned. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Actions speak louder than words. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. The early bird catches the worm. Haste makes waste. Honesty is the best policy. Waste not, want not. A stitch in time saves 9. Don't judge a book by its cover. Look before you leap. Where there's smoke, there's fire. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. All that glitters is not gold. Too many cooks spoil the broth. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Silence is golden. Prevention is better than cure. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Better late than never. Let sleeping dogs lie. Beware of folks who smile too much and show up with arms full of gifts. And my personal favorite, anything that can go wrong, will. And if that ain't a good argument for basing our social organizations on common sense, then nothing is. This is Professor UD Guru. Thanks for showing up. Bye-bye.